Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello, and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Dennis Stejskal, a director at Sage Construction and Real Estate. And we asked Dennis to join us here today to discuss the incredible value of data on the job site. So welcome, Dennis, and thanks for joining in on the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Look forward to it. Got some stories to share with you, so ready to roll.
Great. Well, before we jump into the deep end of the pool, why don't you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself, maybe your background and kind of where you've gained your expertise?
Sure. Yeah, I have actually been in the construction technology market for over 40 years. Graduate, a big Badger fan, the University of Wisconsin, and got hired right out of school by Timberline Software. And that was way back in 79. And from 79 to present, I've been with Timberline Software, who was actually acquired by Sage Software in 2003. So it's been a long haul, and for the most part, I've been with them the whole time, and it's been really exciting. I've had the opportunity to be in many roles. I was in sales, I was in support, I was in development, not as a developer, but I ran a QA department. I've consulted, I've installed systems. And then I actually got into the whole product management and product line owner, and I basically designed and built out the Timberline, now called Sage Construction Real Estate 300. And so with all that, I've had a great amount of experience working with customers, with the market, and I'm very now heavily involved with the rollout of Sage Intact Construction, our latest construction offering. But the part that has really been cool is when I first started in '79, I went out to Portland, Oregon, and I went into the corporate offices of Timberline Software, and I sat down in front of a Burroughs mini computer, and that was pretty cool, a Burroughs mini computer. And then we moved to the TI mini computers, and then on into the DOS-based microcomputers, and of course Windows came in there. That's when we actually released the kind of the now famous Timberline product, and local area networks and all that kind of stuff. And then I had the opportunity to watch the internet and the adoption of the internet in operational solutions. We weren't seeing it in construction and in construction costing, but the operational solutions were really getting accepted. And now we're kind of at a new entry into just another step in that journey, and it's the acceptance of the cloud for cloud-based ERP solutions. Up until real recently, they really weren't accepted, and the demand wasn't there. The CFOs weren't comfortable. It's changed. They will lead the pack now, I believe, as we go into the future. So it's been quite a journey, quite a lot of fun. I love working with contractors. I did concrete for 2 summers while in college, so I pulled my number of forms out of those basements, and it's always been a riot getting out to the job sites.
Wow. Yeah, Dennis, you've got quite a history, and I've known you for at least 15 or more of those years, most recently. So I think, the history that you have seen with your own eyes and experience has really been kind of a digital revolution. And when we talk about that, I think everything comes back down to data, I think. So when you hear people about data, I mean, what kind of data are we talking about for construction that this is about?
Yeah, my world's been more wrapped around the data related to the dollar. And, Timberline was founded off an accounting type solution. So a lot of everything I've been involved with has been really tied to the dollar. Now, as we've seen the operational systems come into play, you start, of course, seeing all sorts of other data. You see data relating to RFIs, submittals. We see processes occurring where, if someone's dealing with a submittal and that submittal is getting slowed down for whatever reason, all of a sudden it impacts schedule, and schedule starts getting impacted. That hurts a bunch. But as I look over history, um, again, my background has been more the dollar. And as I look at uh, the types of data, it really comes down to the role. If I'm in finance, I of course am looking at general ledger data, cost data. What's hitting my WIP schedule this week and this month. Do I have balances, AR balances that are overdue, or AP balances that are overdue, et cetera, et cetera. So very, financial, of course, facing data. But as I look at the field, um, there's a lot of data, of course, those project centric people need. And again, I'm going to focus on the financial side of it. As I look at superintendents, the need to look at estimates compared to actual, that's pretty critical. Am I getting close to my budget? How am I doing? Being able to take these numbers in, and for the project manager truly to understand his margin position, uh, as well as to understand his margin, what direction is it heading, up or down. Productivity is another area. If you're a self-performing contractor, truly understanding, where am I at on productivity, and in selected trades, if you're off a little bit at the start of the job, and if you don't figure out a way to address that, you're gonna fall short. And of course, we know what that means. So again, it comes down to the role. A lot of the data, and I think this is a relatively true statement. If I look back over the last 40 years, the data hasn't changed for the most part. A lot of it is the same data. Now, when you get into BIM and you get into some of the more modern technologies like that, of course, there's different types of data. But in some of the core project management, financial type data, it's the same data. Okay, it is literally the same. And over the years, we spent more time on figuring out how to collect the data, and then use the data to how to try to figure out what went wrong, or if something went wrong. And then we've kind of migrated to using the data to say, yeah, I know something went wrong. Why? And we're now in a new evolution, and we've been labeling this, construction financial manager 1, construction finance manager level 2, and level 3. The 1 has been the historian, the guy who looks and says, "Yep, we had a loss." Okay, and that has migrated into, yeah, we had a loss or we had a gain, and, we had a great job. And now they're asking the question why, and they're looking at the data to understand the why. We're at a new level now, and they're, getting that better access to data is allowing them to ask the question, well, what can we do different to influence that outcome? And that's where we call CFO, CFM level 3, and that's where we're going. So exciting to see that transition occurring.
Yeah, when you, so there's, contractors that'll be listening to this, and some of them may be thinking, essentially some of this data is slipping through their fingers. They're not really leveraging it properly. What would you advise them, or maybe contractors that aren't doing mobile data collection? How could you direct them to try and get and access that data better?
Yeah. So there is a lot of data that is being collected today. Some of the methodology to collect it can be improved. You mentioned remote data collection. Well, if we can collect it in the field quicker and get it into systems that can better analyze it, we now can look at daily productivity. But without even just go into new methods of collection, there's a lot of data in these systems already that are just not being exercised. And I don't know of an operational system that tracks RFIs, for example, that doesn't have two dates. One date is when the RFI was initiated, and the other date is when the RFI was closed. Every single RFI system that I've ever seen has those two dates, but people do not make the effort in many cases to put the dates in and then utilize that, because that little example that I just talked through, that's your cycle time on your RFIs. And there's been numerous studies out there that have shown if you can improve that cycle time on that RFI, you're going to improve the profitability of a job. So learn what you can do with what you've got. And we've got in all the systems that I've been involved with, there's plenty of spots to put the data. There's many ways to get the data there, but in many cases the data is not being collected, and thus it's not being used. So understand what data your systems can store today. Bring in a consultant. Talk to the consultant. And probably the most important is talk about it internally. If someone's inside the office and they're working, and you're out there in the field, and you say, "Well, they can't." They can't gather that for me, or they can't store that. I'm going to use a spreadsheet. And someone starts using a spreadsheet, and then they keep using that spreadsheet. So they've got to communicate, talk internally. If I can get you this information, can you do this for me? And can you help me here? So get those internal discussions going of what would be helpful, what can be gathered. And over the years, I definitely have seen the walls between finance and operation just continue to break down, to shrink. The walls are shrinking. They're becoming more allies every single day, and they have to, of course. And by getting in there and talking about the needs, there's a lot of smart people on both sides of the coin, on both operations and finance, that can probably figure out a way to do it with some of the tools they already have. So I would start there. Look
So
first at what you've got, and then secondly, what you need.
Yeah, so if I'm reading between the lines, it's more opening up those lines of communication and kind of reporting and checking back in and giving that feedback loop is the key.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And for sure.
So within that, we've got people in the field, we got people in the office, we got ownership, we've got management teams in the middle. We have, again, boots on the ground, guys out there that actually have to execute on these things. And you mentioned essentially, the phrase that kept coming to mind was, you can't manage what you don't measure.
Yep.
I think we're measuring a lot of things, but we're not necessarily looking at those measurements or making decisions based off of those in a timely manner.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that measurement is key to pretty much any process. If you get into any process management, you really want to put ways to measure in there. And in construction, there's all sorts of processes going on. I referenced the RFI example. Well, that's a process. Laying bricks is a process. Hanging drywall is a process. Well, if it's supposed to be taking me X amount of of if I'm supposed to be able to do X amount of drywall per hour, well, that's a, you got to measure that, because if you don't measure it, you don't know realistically how you're performing. Everything has a scorecard, and ideally, you don't want to wait until the very end to realize that I'm way behind. And technology can definitely help you there. And there's some other things which we might talk about in a little while that really allow us to say, what are some of the things that could help us uh, kind of take us from even a level 1 to a level 2 and a level 3 of using the data. And as I think about that, one of the challenges that I think a lot of the teams get into is they come up with an idea, they come up with a need, and someone is chartered with going off and getting it done. And any implementation of technology is a change, and we've all been to seminars and webinars on change management and how do you implement change. I'm not talking about construction change, but process change. And I always sit back and I think about that, and it starts with right up front. Don't make any decisions in a vacuum. Get gather feedback, get requirements, understand what the problem is. Um, you mentioned the word communicate. Open those lines of communication. Get involvement. So when you get a technology direction and you want to start implementing it, again, get involvement from everyone on what the requirements are. What do we need to do? And once you kind of start into it, put together that plan. I think in a lot of cases, I've seen people implement. We're going to implement it for every single person in the company. Start with small groups. Get proper training in place. So there's just a lot of things that one can do to better manage and implement, some of these different process changes that involve technology process changes.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting you mentioned a plan, kind of almost like a plan to execute the plan, so to speak, kind of a.
Yeah, to some degree. And as you definitely want to think about it, but of course the execution's the key. And with technology, you also find people that some are more tech savvy than others. So pair those people up. If you've got a young someone, a young intern even, or someone new to the company who's really a tech savvy, team them up with a more senior superintendent if you want to get that superintendent involved. And I actually saw that happen one time. There's a company here in Dallas that I was working with, and I had met with them months before, and I had actually participated in one of the roundtables about the team, and it was about kind of the subject field access, field tools, et cetera, et cetera. And there was this one superintendent, he was kind of sitting in the corner, not showing a lot of interest. Oh, no, that ain't gonna work for me. That ain't gonna work for me. Fast forward, I think it was about 5 months, and I went out to this job site. It was a church down in Fort Worth. I to this day, I occasionally drive by, and this story comes back. And we go out to his job trailer. We get in the job trailer. We talk for a little bit, and then we went out to the job site. And as he's walking out the job site, he grabbed his tablet. And as he grabbed his tablet, it was kind of like, huh, that's interesting. And we proceeded to kind of go on the job site and look at some things. And numerous times during that trip, he would use it to reference a document of some sort. He took a couple pictures here and there of something he noticed. And so that thing was kind of hung to him. We went to lunch, and he pulled out his tablet again. So the comment there, and I said, you sure seem like you're picking that up pretty quickly compared to, 4 or so months ago when I first visited with you. And he says, yeah, I really like this thing. And we had a junior project manager that hung around with me for a little while, and he showed me some tips and tricks on how to use these things. And he said, I really enjoy it. So, pair some people up. Not everyone likes this technology stuff, and really try to get them to understand that value.
Yeah, that's great. That's sage advice, no pun intended,
Hmm.
to uh, to construction workers and companies out there. So, kind of along the lines with one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, of some of the different technologies that you've seen adopted in construction over the last few years, which one seems to be the most surprising to you, and why?
Yeah, I've been. That's a tough one. I'm really not sure I'm surprised by any new technologies. As we've seen technology evolve. We know it's going to happen. We've seen such an acceptance of the cloud, that I'm not surprised by new technology. There's a lot of smart people out there that can invent this technology. Um, if I had to pick one, I'm starting to see better tools for expense management that's occurring quite a bit. Um, the integration between the suppliers and the contractors, I think I'm seeing more things happening there, which again I'm not surprised by, but I'm glad to see it's happening. Some of the more um, design type tools and the ability for walking the job site and tagging things to the BIM model and all that type of technology. I'm not surprised by it, but I think it's fabulous that it's happening. Um, Probably the thing uh, that if I guess another comment I'd make is I'm more surprised by the lack of adoption,
Mm.
and it's in some really simple areas. One of them you and your organization are very close to: time capture. Simple time capture. y- as well as I do, we talk to companies every week that are still using paper. Okay. Oh, don't get it. Don't get it. Why haven't they? So I'm really surprised, in that little example. Why haven't they? Notification tools is another one. You, the the amount of data that is collected, there is no doubt, in a construction office, the amount of data is overwhelming. There's no way that any individual can keep up with the amount of data. And there's tools out there that can help them there to monitor the data, to provide notifications when something doesn't look right. Those tools are becoming smarter with artificial intelligence, and they're still not the and that, is it because they don't trust them? I don't know the answer to that, but I think the underutilization still of some of this technology is probably more surprising than new technology.
Yeah, so really it sounds like one of the most common technology issues is maybe not properly adopting or using the tools they have. Would that be a true statement?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I talk to customers every day, and sometimes they're yelling at us for, God, I wish your software would do this, or I wish your software would do that. And you'd be surprised by how many times I have to say, well, sir, in all respect, it does. And they go, show me that. And I show it to them, they go, I'll be damned. And that's it. It happens. Now, of course we get comments where, God, why did your software do that? And you're right, it doesn't, but we'll work on that. We'll work on that. So, I think it is, we started out the conversation a little bit of knowing what you have and what you have to work with. And so getting the proper level of consulting and training can often uncover hidden gems in the technology they have. Another story, there was a contractor, and this story is a little bit dated, but it's still relevant. We had introduced some new change management software for the project managers, and this guy struggled with it, and they were ready to throw it out. And there was one particular piece of it that it was a little confusing. We could have done a better job implementing it, from a usability perspective. But after I sat down with him and we walked through it, and he really got the training on it, he really, really, really ran with it. Fast forward about, let's see, when would I see him? Fast forward, I saw him at a user group meeting, and we were talking, and I knew he had really picked up on this technology and was using it. And we started talking about it, and so 12 years later, he's running his whole change management. He's evolved it. He's done unbelievable things with, even to the point that he said, he is looking at other project management systems and things like that. And he said, I can't leave him. The thing that this change management system does, I'm never going to give it up. It has saved our companies hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what it took was that training, and for him to really engage and understand it. So knowing what you got, putting in place the proper rollout methods, get the training in place. And the other part of it, issues that I see contractors run into, and again, I've hit on this a little bit, and this shows up whether you've got existing technology that might serve the problem, address the need, or it might be that you need new technology.
Yeah.
Understand what you need. Have a good feel for what you need first. Don't go in there kind of saying, well, show me what it does. Go in there saying, I want to see it do this. They can then show you what else it can do, but you've got to have that baseline set of requirements that you got to make sure it can do that baseline. Because if you don't do that homework internally before you go out and shop, you're going to miss something. Something's going to be missed. So it's really critical to do those requirements and really understand, what do I need for my organization the way we do it. And again, I'm not saying you can't change processes, and new technology might give you some ideas, but there's always that baseline.
So what I'm hearing is maybe prioritize and figure out what those biggest rocks are that are in the road, and
Yep.
move those first.
Yeah, get those undertaken and get those understood and move those, and then you can move on to other things. But even if you got some big ones there, make sure you need to move them, because maybe sometimes you don't need to move them. So, and it's truly, again, just understanding for our organization, what do we need?
Great intel there. So if we were, talking about maybe an area or some areas that you feel like contractors are just missing the boat on. I mean, you mentioned time collection, time cards and spreadsheets. Are there any other areas that you feel like as a market, there's a lot of companies just kind of missing the boat on something that they really should be doing?
What I see happening is, the contractors are becoming much more knowledgeable about technology. You sit in on a conversation with them, and they're asking, the questions that are coming out are much better, much stronger, much more thought. A lot of times they make you really think about how you want to answer that, but very knowledgeable. The buyers are becoming more knowledgeable. The contractors are more knowledgeable. So I'm not seeing what I would call big misses. The areas that I do believe there is growth on. I mentioned time. So interoperability is still a big one. Some systems allow for interoperability, some systems don't, some systems do a better job of it. Be more demanding there. If you got two systems that you have to tie together, push the vendors, push the contract, push the vendors to kind of make sure that they fit together nicely. Technology is improving where that can happen. And sometimes we vendors just need to be pushed a little bit there. That's the forefront of my mind constantly, is that in these systems today, it's really going to be hard for one software technology vendor to be able to do it all. We really believe in customer choice, that you know, there are tools that are better suited for your company needs. So number one, make sure you understand what your company needs. And then number two, don't necessarily settle for just getting that from a single vendor. You might have to go to a secondary vendor, talk to your primary vendors, and ask them what they think. Who could I use for a small tool system? Do you have anyone in mind? We really need to make improvements in that area. So understand what it is, and then reach out. But again, don't be afraid to look across multiple vendors. Some other specific examples, let me think here. Time interoperability. I know one. I think an area that I see growing, it's an area that the systems are becoming better at. They're becoming definitely much stronger, is the whole area of electronic payments. There's still there's a lot of companies writing checks, and I think there's many efficiencies gained if we go to electronic payment methodologies, as well as reducing risk and a variety of other things. So the whole electronic payment exchange, I think another example of that, where I'm just surprised there's aren't more companies doing it, is collaboration on the pay app side. We've all heard of Textura and GC Pay. Procore is doing a great job with their invoice management system. So I think an area that's underutilized today is the collaboration between the subcontractor and the general contractor in the area of pay apps and that electronic exchange of data. Tools have been out there for years, but the adoption is still pretty low in those spaces. So I think that's an area. Those are a couple of them that I can think of.
Sure. No, that's great. I think, and kind of an underpinning to each of those, comments and things that you shared, what do you feel like is going on within the construction industry and adoption of the cloud? I know Sage has a strategy there. You mentioned some of that. What
Okay,
are your feelings
great
on
question.
that today?
Like I kind of mentioned earlier, right off the bat, the cloud's been here, and we all know it's been around, and it's been in construction. You go back to the turn of the century, and Constructware, we all heard of that. That kind of launched a lot of it. Procore's been around a long time, so a lot of the operational systems are there, and they've been accepted in the marketplace, and that's going to continue. That's going to continue to grow. That's going to increase the types of collaboration between the project stakeholders, be it owner and GC and subcontractors, etc. That collaboration is just going to increase. I'm seeing more involvement in the building trade people, and I use the word, I didn't want to use the word on the job site, but in the building. The superintendents are adopting technology more and more and more every day. So I see a big rise in technology in that particular role. There's systems coming out now that are really targeted at the superintendent, and all that is all cloud-based software. As I look at what I think the biggest revolution going on right now, it is, like I mentioned earlier, it is the adoption of ERP software in the cloud.
Mm.
And, as we look at cloud software, um, it shows up in different flavors, of course. Is if I stick my software in a data center and it's running on a VPN, but I've got external access to it, is that cloud? Well, it kind of is, but it's not really true cloud. And I'm really talking true browser-based multi-tenant cloud software that is being accepted. And in my opinion, in our opinion, that is a big direction of the future. And so as that happens, we're going to be seeing, in our opinion, a lot of movement there. I was at a CFMA meeting. Oh, I think it was in Texas. I think it was down in San Antonio, probably about 3 years ago, maybe four, but I think it was actually uh, three. No, it was actually four. I now remember. It was about 4 years ago, and there was a round table that they had a bunch of folks at, and they asked a question. If you had to replace your server, and it was kind of phrased along these lines, because a lot of the companies were on true, they had servers sitting in their closets,
Mhm.
and they would say, well, if you had to replace your server, would you consider putting it, in a cloud solution? Would you kind of go that route? And about 4 years ago, you got about, I don't know, 20%, 25% that kind of would raise their hand. The
Mm.
following year, 3 years ago, that question was asked again. It was basically phrased almost identical way, and I bet you it was close to 50%.
Wow.
Uh, this past year, it was a virtual CFMA. I was hoping that I was going to be able to uh, attend a roundtable where that same question was going to be asked, because I firmly believe it would be close to 90 to 100%.
Wow.
Are we 100% there? No. I just had an interaction with a customer today who says, "Yeah, I'm just not ready to put my accounting system in the cloud yet." Totally understandable, especially when you hear about, all the hacks and all this. But uh, it was interesting. I talked to another contractor this week who a friend of his had experienced a ransomware event,
Mm.
and it was a serious one. It's still ongoing, and he says he said I've got to get the system out of my back office. And so there's a lot of reasons why it's reached this new level of demand. The recent one that we're in, this whole COVID thing, in that first 6 weeks there was a lot of companies kind of struggling. How do I get a check out the door? How do
Mhm.
I get a check out the door? And you think about that, the technology to address that has been available for many years, but you know this is a world changing event that's going on right now, and I think that is also going to drive the acceptance of the cloud in ERP to just new levels. And so, like I mentioned at the start of the call, we've been through a variety of um, major changes in the accounting world, and I'm speaking strictly accounting now. And we went from minis to micros to land-based systems, to operational cloud systems, and now we're into operate our accounting, ERP, finance, cloud-based systems. It's a new level of technology that I'm really excited about, because I think it opens up so many more doors for interoperability. Collaboration is a lot easier between product or project partner, project team members, as well. It's a lot easier between the software companies to integrate their systems if they're both sitting in the cloud.
Well, that's great. Well, that's very insightful feedback, and I think you're right. We're seeing the same revolution and
Yeah.
migration.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, I guess
Great.
One last question for you, Dennis, that I'd like
Sure.
to end on. So if there was one superpower, for a lack of a better term, that Dennis Stejskal has that you're known for, or that you kind of view yourself as, what is that thing that you've learned in these 4+ decades of working in this industry that's served you the most?
Yeah, that's a great question, and my response is going to be to every single person listening, is listen, 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 and then ask why. A lot of times I will, this meeting I had yesterday where I mentioned I actually went on site with a customer, and we talked, and it was great listening, and observing and seeing facial expressions and hand movements and everything. And then I had the opportunity after listening, well, why do you do it like that? Well, why do you do that? And I really can't ask the why until I listen. And so that would be what I really work hard at, is to make sure I'm listening so I can, correctly ask the whys, because then I might be able to do something with that, from a type of product we build, from a change we make to the software, to a new product we build. I've got to listen and then act from there.
Wonderful. Great advice. And again, thank you so much, Dennis, for joining us today. This has been a great pleasure, and I've enjoyed our conversation. I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Thank you very much, Mike. As always, like you said, we've known each other for 15 years. I've always enjoyed the conversation, and I can't say I'm looking forward to another 15, because someday I am going to retire, but at least to another next couple years, we'll be talking again. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
You bet. Sounds like a plan. And thank you all for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast. We appreciate, as always, your listenership and you joining in with us today on the conversation. We hope you found value in this, and that you've been able to glean some knowledge and things that you're happy to share with your friends in the industry and your coworkers. If you like what you heard today, please give us a like and a follow on Instagram @workmax_. And of course, as always, please subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. We appreciate it.